Good morning. My name is Mauricio Cárdenas. I'm a co-founder and chairman of the board at the LATAM Green Chamber of Commerce. We partner with in VR in the organization of the second Colombia Green Energy Summit that will happen between March 13th and 14th this year in a few weeks. As a preview of what will happen in that event, we have the privilege of bringing in three speakers who are very knowledgeable about the green energy trends, not just in Colombia, but worldwide. So let me present, without further ado, the three guest speakers. First one is Alejandro Castañeda, Executive Director of the National Association of Generator Companies, ANDEG, Green Energy Generation Companies. Alejandro, welcome to the floor.
Hi, Mauricio. Thank you so much for the invitation, and thank you for having me here.
Thank you. Where are you connecting from?
From Bogota, from Colombia, actually.
Excellent. Incidentally, just for you to know, and the audience, I'm connecting from Mexico City. You will hear a background noise. That's a dog named Blake, as the British poet. Secondly, we have in our roster Jan Willem van Volkoven, Executive Director of Holland House, Colombia. Welcome, Jan.
Good morning, Mauricio. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. So do you also connect from Bogota?
I'm also in Bogota.
Excellent. Tell us a little bit about Holland House. What do you guys do?
Thank you. Holland House is the Chamber of Commerce that connects the Netherlands and Colombia. So what we do is help Dutch businesses and also Colombian businesses in connecting. And we have done that for 10 years already. And renewable energy, the energy transition, is one of the absolute priority sectors we work on.
Excellent. I was remiss and didn't ask Alejandro the same question. Tell us a little bit about ANDEG, Alejandro.
Well, Mauricio, ANDEG is an association that unites or gathers companies that produce energy in Colombia, basically power producers. Most of my companies that are associated in ANDEG are companies that use are thermal power plants, basically use gas or coal. But since all the things that we're going to talk about and the great opportunities in renewables, they have been moving along, diversifying their portfolios and becoming more of a renewable project-based companies than thermal power plants. So that's basically what we do.
So you guys are at the forefront of the energy transition.
Exactly. We are the one that are making this possible, basically.
Excellent. And last but not least, my colleague and friend, Michelle Thatcher. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So tell us a little bit about your role and what the U.S. Green Chamber of Commerce does.
Yeah, so I'm the CEO of the U.S. Green Chamber, and with our chamber, we help to promote and protect America's emerging economy. And we do that through working with businesses, as well as working with other chambers of commerce, not just in the United States, but from around the world, to try to provide tools and resources to make them more successful in that transition.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Michelle and myself and the organization that I lead have a long history of collaboration, close to 12 years this year. And just as a side matter, we will meet in Panama this week for an International Energy Day event. So Alejandro and Jan, and obviously the people from in VR who organized this panel, particularly Alberto, you guys are welcome to join us. Panama is just around the corner from Colombia.
Thank you, Mauricio.
So let's get started. I'm gonna ask a couple of questions to each of you, and then a final summary questions to all of you. Starting by uh, uh, Amdeg. Uh, so tell us, uh, how is Colombia's current energy policy landscape evolving to support green energy initiatives? And what are the challenges and opportunities?
Well, Mauricio, thank you so much again. And just let me start with a little bit of background here. Maybe around 2014 or something like that, Colombia just started to pass laws to incentivize green energy power, and basically starting with solar and wind power. What kind of incentives we were trying to do at the beginning? What we were trying to do was basically tax incentives, basically income deduction or VAT exemptions to projects that were gonna be built with solar or with or wind power, basically. And that kind of evolved in 2019, and we create another law trying to to broaden the spectrum in terms of technologies, not only renewables, starting with solar and wind, but also adding carbon capture sequestration, also adding hydrogen, and geothermal and things like that. So basically, what we're trying to do right now is trying to consolidate the new capacity in solar and wind, but also thinking ahead of what was going to happen in the future in terms of technologies, and what can or how these technologies can help Colombia to meet the main objective, which is be carbon neutral by 2050. So that's the main goal that we have. So right now, let's say that Colombia has some challenges and some opportunities. In terms of challenges, I would say that that making possible or finishing the projects had been very difficult for a couple of reasons. I mean, for basically um, for taking more time than we expected in terms of environmental licensing, um, for social conflicts that have been developed in some areas that Colombia has very good potential for him. For example, in La Guajira, which is one of the main um, districts or one of the main departments that we have, where the potential is very high in terms of wind and in terms of solar. So social conflicts. What I mean by that is basically the community. Whenever there is a new company that enters the field or enters the area, they think that since they have been, I mean, very forgotten by the government, they think that the company is going to fulfill all the needs in terms of education, water supply, or things like that. So that issue has been delaying the entrance of renewables. Basically, we were expecting around 2,000 megawatts of wind and solar power by last year, by 2023, and unfortunately, no, none of that was able to be in place. At the end, we end up with 300 megawatts of installed capacity or new capacity, and the rest of the project are having trouble because of these issues. So that's one of the things that we're concerned and very concerned about. Now we have talked to the government, not only this government, this new government that has a year and a half in place, but the last government as well, trying to see how can we be more effective in terms of doing the projects, and at the end having the installed capacity that Colombia needs. Colombia right now has a very need for, or a lot of new power is needed in Colombia because the demand is growing a lot. And what we are seeing right now is that by 2026 we will be needing around 2,000 megawatts of new capacity in terms of how to say that, in terms of thermal power plants, in terms of firm energy. If you translate that to renewables, we will be needing about 8,000 megawatts of solar or 4,000 megawatts of wind. So there is a lot of needs in Colombia for that. So that's the first opportunity that we have. We need to add more installed capacity, but we need to solve these issues, these challenges that we have. So if we can be, so if we want to be successful in this transition, and besides that, well, Colombia has great opportunities in terms of, like I said, in solar. We have very well areas in Colombia that have a lot of irradiation. We have very good potential in wind. We have, like I said, in Guajira, we have, I think, is the second place in the world with the best and constant, one of the best and constant wind. I mean, potential that we have that we could have. We have a lot of hydropower as well. And like I said, we are starting to think more ahead in terms of on hydrogen and other things that we can talk about later on.
Yeah, absolutely. Bottom line, Alejandro, as a percent of total electricity generation capacity, how has the renewable energy contribution evolved in the last 10 years?
In the last 10 years, we have passed from, well, starting with our electricity matrix is 70% hydro, 30% thermal, as it was 10 years ago. Right now is like 68% hydro, 28% thermal power plants, and around 4% is renewables, mainly solar. Like I said, I mean, we haven't been able to allocate or to finish more wind power. But what we expect, or what the government is expecting, is by 2026, 2028, that 4% could increase to 10%. So that's one of the objectives that Colombia has.
Oh, okay, fair. So let's switch gears and ask a different question to Jan on behalf of Holland House. As a bridge between Colombian and Dutch businesses, what unique opportunities do you see for international collaboration in Colombia's green energy sector, Jan?
Thank you, Mauricio, and also Alejandro. I think great to complement a little bit what you what you also mentioned. I think from also a bit of background, I think if you look at the European perspective, so if you look from the Netherlands to Colombia, I think if you talk about the opportunity has been, I think, has been identified. If you look at the opportunity, there's the potential of Colombia in wind energy, solar energy, hydropower, biogas, biomass. So Colombia, a country with a huge availability of resources and a huge potential to be one of the countries with a bigger production of renewable energy. So that's, I think, from the European perspective, something that if you ask the Germans or the Italians or the Spanish or the Dutch, as in my case, that's something I think we will always first mention. The ambition is the second one. So besides potential, there is an ambition. If you look at the world map and you look at Colombia, you see a country with an ambition to lead the energy transition. So you see a country with ambitious plans, with some roadmaps in place, with strategies, with a government convinced of the need to transform the energy matrix. So also the ambition, that is something I think should be mentioned if we talk about the opportunity. Then, of course, there's the challenges. Last week, also together with the other European countries, we presented a position paper to the Colombian Ministry of Energy, also talking about the challenges and the solutions we would propose. I would say that if we talk about energy transition and implementing more renewable energy anywhere, there will always be challenges. So also in the Netherlands, we have a lot of challenges which are not that different from Colombia. But of course, the challenges need to be addressed, and to make the sector really live up to its potential, because I think the potential is there, but to live up to the potential, there is challenges we keep working on day by day. And I think something from our perspective and the way we work as Holland House, as Dutch Colombian Chamber of Commerce, we also want to work with Colombia on the challenges. So we want to be there not only as a partner from the private sector that would like to develop and implement solar or wind energy projects, but we also want to be there as a partner in helping to develop this sector. And I think that also translates to, for example, cooperation on the policy level. So there's a clear interest to also, with the learnings and what we already did wrong in the Netherlands, to help Colombia avoid some mistakes or share the learnings with Colombia on the policy level. So to help the Colombian government and all the different agencies to advance and to give some advice on what we have learned in the Netherlands. But also on the knowledge level, I think energy transition also requires a major change in the staff and the workforce needed. For example, we are very interested in the offshore wind developments in Colombia, but offshore wind does not come alone. To develop offshore wind, you need the ports to be ready. For the ports to be ready, you need to do all kinds of updates on the workforce. You need to develop their knowledge. You need to do capacity building also for them to be ready. So also on the human talent part, we work very closely together to also bring knowledge, to bring also that practical part to get the workforce ready. So that's talking about the opportunity and also the way we are working on the opportunity, Mauricio.
Excellent. Jan, following up on Alejandro's comments, he mentioned that social conflict, particularly in Guajira, has slowed down the start of the transmission of both solar and wind energy farm generation. The Netherlands has a long-standing collaboration with the Colombian government and institutions regarding hydro management. I wonder if do you guys have any comments about how to deal with this social conflict that apparently has slowed down the increase of renewable energy generation in Colombia?
Yeah, thank you. I think it is, of course, a concern we share, and a concern that also, if you talk, for example, about the position paper presented last week, is there in a very prominent place because it is an issue. And also from European perspective, these kind of processes, if you talk about time, they tend to take more time in Colombia than in most European countries. So that is something that needs to be improved. And I think also there could be an opportunity. There could be an opportunity because, of course, Colombia is a unique country. In Colombia, we have indigenous people. In Colombia, we have all kinds of communities that you want to make part of the project. In La Guajira, there's a lot of social issues, and maybe these projects could actually offer a better future for many people. But for that to be a reality, there is a way to go. And I think clear rules would be most crucial. If we have clear rules of how the license would work, how the process is being structured, the times that each step would take every time you ask for a license, then I think we're getting closer to the solution.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, Michelle, a little preface to my question to you. In 2018, Michelle and myself met with a senator from the Colombian Congress who was among the people interested in furthering the energy transition. 6 years have passed. At the same time, in the US, there's been ups and downs. In the last couple of years, a very big up on promoting the energy transition. So, what's your take, Michelle, on what are the lessons from the US that could be somehow exported to the Colombian scene?
Well, thank you, Mauricio. And I would just to follow up on that same conversation that you were having with John and Alejandro. I think one of the lessons that we've learned over time is to be inclusive of all communities from the get-go. I think sometimes in the United States, we've created a plan and then we've gone into a community and said, here's our plan, take it. And this is what it is. And we've been burned, rightly so, to just kind of go in, barging into a community and say, this is what we're going to do. So that's one of our lessons that we continue to have challenges with it. So I don't want to say that we've solved that problem yet. I think one of the most important lessons to just share is that this green energy transformation creates jobs. So there are over 8 million jobs in just renewable energy today in the United States. And in 2021 and 2022, those green energy jobs grew faster than the overall US employment sector. So that's a really important one that we like to share because that's front and foremost on many people's minds. Another one, I think a lesson is to really minimize the hurdles and the influence of our extractive industries. We've had that challenge for many years in the United States, still do, where we're constantly up against that. And of course, there's a lot of money behind that. So just making sure that we start to build more new favorable regulations towards green energy alternatives. And that just to share as far as a lesson that this makes economic sense. So today the energy technologies of the future are creating very well-paying jobs that per dollar spent and will continue to do so far into the future. So I think, again, with the jobs and the well-paying jobs, those are really important to have. And when we're building this transformation, that we look to build capacity for climate for in the long haul. So making sure that we're building, we have more staff and we have more cooperation, coordination between different agencies. And with that, we also have technical assistance. I think the challenge, especially in the United States, and we've been targeted for not always educating our workforce properly. And we need to go out and make sure that everybody has the proper training to make sure that we can fulfill this energy transition.
Those are fantastic lessons that can very straightforwardly be applied in Colombia. There's another one that we went through with your support, without your knowing, Michelle. Michelle introduced us at the Colombia Green Chamber of Commerce to a fellow who leads the Institute of Transportation at the University of California. When we were working with the Bogota Council on technical notes to support the declaration of climate emergency for the city, we consulted with him and got some very powerful answers that are one of the factors that explains that Bogota today, 3 years after the fact, has the largest electrical mass transit fleet in the world outside China, because part of the climate emergency decisions that were taken by the council in collaboration with the office of the mayor took us in that route. So that was an acceleration of our energy transition as applied to mass transport. I wanted you to know, Michelle.
Well, thank you for sharing. And I'm really glad to hear that, because I think with the Green Chamber of Commerce, we're all about partnerships and making connections and bringing the right connections to the right people. So
Exactly. Now I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. You can pick either one, or you can answer both, so that we can reserve at the end of this session time for Q&A with the audience, provided they ask questions or make comments. So those two questions are the following. So how can public-private partnerships be effectively utilized to accelerate the growth of green energy in Colombia? That's question number one for you to pick. And the second one, what are the most promising green energy technologies or innovations that could significantly impact Colombia's energy sector in the near future? You can answer both, or you can pick one of those. So let's go in a similar sequence, starting by Alejandro.
Thank you, Mauricio. Well, I'll try to answer both. At first, I would say that yeah, I mean, I think one of the main reasons why we have been a little bit successful in developing and trying to bring more renewables into our matrix is basically because of that. I mean, because there has been a little bit of thinking, a little bit of understanding between the private and public sector and how to collaborate and how to work, and use the best of those two words to get what we were saying before, to try to get to the main objective that we have, which is being carbon neutral by 2050. There are some concerns about right now in this new government, because they are seeing that yes, the private sector is good, the private sector can invest, but we want to do it as well as part of I mean, we want to invest directly as a government in renewables, and trying to kick or to start or to jumpstart faster the transition. So I think that we have to be careful there, because we can end up with in a mess if we start to I mean to get in conflict between the roles that the government and the private sector have in this development. So yeah, I mean, I think it's been great. It's been a great collaboration. I mean, for example, as Jan was saying before, we have a couple of roadmaps already in place for new technologies, and that has been possible not only because the government kind of knows what to do, but because the government has been able to listen to the private sector and try to get to know more experiences from around the world, to see how can we, for example, try to bring offshore wind to Colombia, or try to see how can we accelerate hydrogen into Colombia, things like that. So I think we have been successful, but we have to be careful because of this kind of mixed roles that we can have in the future. And secondly, I mean, for the second question, I will have to say,
if you will, Alejandro, I was just worried that since we took half an hour for the first question, that there wouldn't be enough time for the two questions. But you were fast at answering the first of the second round. So let me ask the same question to the other panelists, and then we'll come back to the third round. So, Jan, what's your take on private-public partnerships?
Thank you, Mauricio. Yeah, I think I can be quite short in answering this specific question. It's also, in my case, a bit related to the third round. But I think, in general, if you look at the current status of renewable energy in Colombia, I think it needs to be done together. The government, the private sector, also the academic sector, we need to do it together. I think that's the main lesson that can be learned from anywhere where renewable energy is already in place or working well. You need to do it together. There needs to be the conditions for investment to work, also to develop the sector's knowledge is very much needed, because maybe in some of the sectors that are already a bit more mature. Solar energy may be a bit more mature in Colombia already. But if you talk about hydrogen or you talk about biomass, it's all still quite experimental, which also means that we need to do it together. And also, I think that's also a bit part of the way we work as the Netherlands in Colombia. It's not only the Dutch private sector, not only Dutch companies, but it's also bringing along universities, institutes of applied technology. It's also bringing along financing institutions. Also, our government has different organizations that can actually finance these kind of projects, which is also, of course, very much needed. So do it together, but also from countries working in Colombia, do not only bring your companies, but also the other parts of the ecosystem. That would be my main message.
Thank you so much. Michelle, what's your take on public-private partnerships furthering green energy transition in Colombia?
So I'll agree with both Alejandro and John in that, number one, I think we do have to be very careful. And when we move in that direction, that there's just the regulations or ethics behind how those partnerships come together. But then at the same time, I very much support public-private partnerships because we need the investment. We need that knowledge base, especially for working with the universities, that they help to bring the short-term and long-term contracts, help to provide the maintenance, planning, operations. So I think it's very much critical to move quickly, and we know that we need to move quickly.
Let me add one degree of difficulty to the question that I just asked. In Mexico and Spain, the so-called energy communities are a very visible sort of initiative for green energy transition. I've been following. I haven't lived in Colombia in the last 2.5 years, but I do follow the energy policy changes, and I've noticed that energy communities are now part of the equation, particularly to address what you guys in the first round identified as one of the critical components of the energy transition in Colombia, and that was inclusion, or put in a different way, social conflict that slows down the process. So where would energy communities enter into this equation for the green energy transition? Are they desirable? Are they a way to solve the social conflict? Are they meaningful in any way? Alejandro, what's your take?
Mauricio, I think they're meaningful, but we have to be careful. I mean, we have to be very careful in what the community is needing and what we are bringing to the table, not only as a government but only as a company. As companies, and trying to separate what role has each one in each situation. I would say energy communities can be helpful, for example, in La Guajira, for example, in places in Colombia where we don't have, because it's very expensive to bring lines to connect everybody to the national grid, right? We still have 3-4% of people in Colombia that still lack, or they still are not connected and they don't have 24-hour electricity service. So those communities could be helpful to integrate the communities around projects and be part of it, But like I said, I mean, we have to be very careful. For example, what had happened in Colombia before is that you can bring an energy solution to a family but the family doesn't have the need right now, you know. So basically you can provide a solar panel and batteries and things like that, but after 2 or 3 months the people said, I don't need electricity. If they don't have, if they don't have the needs in terms of creating an economic development around that electricity, it's just going to be just scenery, you know. It's going to be part of the of part of something that they don't need. So we have to be, like I said, we have to be very careful. We have to try not only to bring electricity or energy communities to the people, but also try to bring solutions in terms of economic development to those peoples.
Okay, fair. So, Jean, any comments? Because when there's talk about public-private partnerships, you don't have organized communities in the picture, not necessarily. But there's a framework in Colombia, following on the steps of Spain and maybe Mexico, that do have the communities involved.
Yeah, indeed. It's the concept is a little bit less known to me in this case, but I can perfectly follow Alejandro. I think the way he looks at the communities and the added value they could have, I think I'm completely aligned with that. Only thing I maybe could add is that our companies have been specifically successful also in Latin America when the community is combined. If you talk about economic development, as Alejandro did, when it's combined with food security, agricultural produce kind of projects, that seems to be the combination that works best, at least in our experience.
Okay. And same question for Michelle, prefaced by a personal experience. In parts of the states where I've lived, electricity service is provided by cooperatives. For instance, in Colorado. So, what's your take on community energy communities as a
Ooh,
third way?
that's yeah, I didn't understand the first part of the question when you had asked it because I wasn't familiar with those. But the cooperatives, especially like those in Colorado, are phenomenal. And they help to quickly transition a complete region. And I mean, using the example in Colorado, there, I mean, I think that you have the only thing to be careful of, like in Colorado, you have that very strong environmental force on that particular cooperative that's guiding that particular movement to energy transition. So as long as the communities, we understand where the influence is coming from and that the influence is pushing towards that renewable sector, then yeah, if it's that type of example, I would say absolutely move in that direction.
Thank you. Okay, now we get to our third round and the questions from the audience that Alberto has been posting. So this last question, same for all of you. What are the most promising green energy technologies or innovations that could significantly impact Colombia's energy sector in the near future? So let's keep the sequence,
Okay.
Alejandro.
All right. Very briefly, I would say that a couple of things there. One, since Colombia has a lot of coal in terms of natural resource, I mean, we have a lot of resources in terms of coal. One of the things that we explore more and use more in terms of development in the future, it could be carbon capture sequestration. I mean, at the end, we can produce hydrogen starting from coal if we have a very clean process to do that. Hydrogen is one of the things that I was mentioned, that since we have that great potential in terms of renewables, basically hydro and wind and solar. One of the things that we are betting a lot is hydrogen. I mean, green hydrogen as well, to be able to position Colombia as one of the key players in terms of production of hydrogen in the future, and maybe that hydrogen can be used as well to provide the hydrogen and produce power from the thermal power plants using that hydrogen as well. Jen already mentioned geothermal biomass, that we have potential as well in that. We still have a lot of hydro to be developed, not in large scale, but a small scale with small hydro power plants. So we have a lot of potential basically, and those 3-4 things could be could be very successful in the future.
Any of what you just mentioned spells green hydrogen?
So during hydrogen, yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, one of the things that the government is betting, and basically Ecopetrol is looking a lot, is green hydrogen being produced in Guajira. Since I mean, whenever we will be able to have a lot of wind power resources from Guajira and solar from Guajira.
Okay, great. Thank you. Jan, same question.
Thank you. Yeah, I think not to make the list exhaustive, but from our perspective, I would say that priorities offshore wind. We are following the developments, the plans, the possible tender very closely. So offshore wind is a sector in which we Dutch, as a maritime country where offshore wind is also developing quickly, are following very much. Second one would be biogas and biomass. I think if you look at Colombia, a very biodiverse country, and if you look at the main products, so palm oil or banana or tropical fruits, there's a lot of waste products that can actually be used to generate energy. And I think there's a lot of knowledge in the Netherlands at different universities, but to apply that knowledge, we need countries like Colombia where you actually have the biodiversity that we don't have. So I think that's where I see a very powerful combination. And the third one would be geothermal. I see that bit by bit, Colombia is also realizing that geothermal could be another element within the mix. So the first projects already being implemented or at least announced. So that would be the three.
Okay, thank you. As earlier, let me preface the question for Michelle. One of the most fascinating features of the work that the U.S. Green Chamber does is an observatory of green innovations. So on that note, Michelle, what have you found worldwide beyond what Alejandro and Jan just talked about that could be meaningful for the green energy transition in Colombia? You're now in Colombia. You've been there twice.
Oh, we have a international solutions team. So I think that's what you're referring to. And there are so many innovative solutions from around the world that we've identified. And that's what we do want to bring to different countries. And as opposed to just focusing on one or two in particular, what I would say is that focus in number one, the low cost, and with a high ROI, first and foremost, and make sure that you're doing your homework and not just grabbing the first technology that the salesperson comes along and tries to bring to each country, because that happens all the time. I think the circular economy options, just like what Jan was saying, the biomass is going to, is really important. We've seen that in so many different factories and utilizing energy there, and any solution that covers the triple bottom line. So making sure that there is a profit there in some way, or that the ROI is short term, that it protects the people, and of course that protects the planet. And that seems obvious, but at the same time, there's a lot of challenges even with hydro, with certain communities that we learn about all the time. So just making sure that inclusivity is a part of it.
Thank you, Michelle.
Solar, wind, and biomass. I would say that.
Absolutely. Forget about geothermal. I don't know, guys, if you've seen the scenes of the fires in Iceland. There are two questions from the audience. I'm going to read them aloud. First one, does the green energy transition strategy include electrification? For example, hydrogen or I suppose the person refers to recyclable batteries. So who wants to tackle that one? I believe green energy transition is about electrification. Isn't that correct? And there's a saying I learned in the first summit, Green Colombia Green Energy Summit, last March in Bogota. No transition without transmission. And obviously, when we're talking about transmission, we're talking about electricity transmission. So
No,
obviously, there are green energies that do not entail electricity.
no,
But in all green energy transition strategies, electricity is first and foremost the priority. Isn't that the case?
that's true, Mauricio. And let me just add something else to that. You just plan. I mean, you just put it very simple, but that is what happening in Colombia. One of the main issues in Guajira is that is that we haven't been able to have in place the transmission to being able to take all the energy that we can produce in Guajira to the system and so forth and so on. So yes, I mean, and also you need to increase the demand side if you want to be successful by adding all this capacity and this new capacity. And so we're thinking about more electrification of the economy as a whole. I mean, more transport. I mean, in terms of metro systems and BRTs and things like that. So it's trying to add up more demand to the system to being able to sustain all these developments in the future.
Exactly. But let me add something. In Mexico, there are studies that should Tesla get its way and others who are following closely, particularly from China, there would not be sufficient electricity generation capacity to supply the load of electric vehicles. So, despite the fact that it is presented as a panacea, we say in Spanish from Latin, I don't know how to pronounce panacea in English or if it means the same. Electric mobility requires tremendous investments that are not in the horizon. So hopefully that won't be the only way to provide green mobility. So what do you think about this, Alejandro? And
No,
obviously afterwards I'll
no,
defer.
that is true. I mean, it's one of the things. I mean, it's not. It could not be the only thing. Like you said, I mean, we have not been able to add up a lot of electric cars in Colombia. I mean, they cost more. I mean, they're most costly, and Colombia is a poor country as an end. I mean, or income or per capita income is very low compared to Europe or compared to US. So if you said, I mean, we're going to change every car in Colombia moving to electric cars, we won't be able to do it. I mean, as much as we wanted, we won't be able to do it because of the lower income that we have as Colombians. But you can add up things, I mean, basically solutions in transportation, solution by the last mile kind of solutions, in terms of green transportation for that last mile, basically. Using more electric bicycles or things like that. I mean, there are things that you can do, and not pushing up the whole change in the economy or the transportation system, because we won't be able to do it in the short term, basically.
Anything to add, Jan or Michelle?
We can't reach our goals unless we do electrification, of course. But at the same time, we're not Tesla to get out charging stations, and we're not. I mean, our sales of electric vehicles have slowed in the United States, and I think a large part because the infrastructure is still not there. So we have to start building the infrastructure to make the consumer feel comfortable with getting an electric vehicle if the vehicle route is it. Obviously, we need more mass transportation that includes that. But right now, we're still using vehicles.
Okay. And we didn't even address the contamination coming from the batteries. Let's not talk about that. Second and last question from the audience. How important is natural gas in Colombia as a bridge to renewable and energy security? Who wants to tackle
Um, no, since we still have, and we still work and many of my company, most of my companies are from the thermal power plants business. I would say that yes, natural gas is a very important solution during the transition. Um, we haven't been able to add up so much research in terms of natural gas in Colombia, and that's a concern that we have. The gas that we have right now will last for 8 to 9 years, but basically in 2 to 3 years we will have to import more natural gas because we won't be able to supply the whole demand that we have in our country. So natural gas, I think, is a key factor. Like I said, of electricity or electricity matrix is hydro plus thermal plus a little bit of renewables. So if we only add up more renewables, we have more intermittency in our system, and we still want to have a little bit more of firm energy to be able uh, to bring more renewables in our system. And the only way to do it, as we have seen it in our country, is we still need thermal power plants to do and to be able to lower that that intermittency that the renewables have. So I think yes, we still need more work in terms of um, more finding and more production in terms of natural gas to be able to make that transition to a carbon neutral state by 2050.
Thank you, Alejandro. Jean, Michelle, anything to add?
I I don't know what the situation is exactly in Colombia, but in the United States, we have tons of natural gas.
Yeah.
I'm actually very close to a lot of natural gas, and I've just from carbon emissions, methane, climate change perspective, not a fan of that technology. I know there's transition that's needed, but I feel like putting in all the infrastructure for natural gas, and especially for there's not a lot there, but if you're putting in all that infrastructure and investment, it's to me, I feel like it's best utilized to go into the other truly green alternatives.
Which brings me to a follow-up question for Jan, if he wants to take it. What's the meaning of the European Union declaring natural gas a green energy form?
Well, that's of course I want to take the question. I think I'm maybe not completely the right person to give my well, at least a political opinion. But I think if you look at many European countries, indeed natural gas is there and is there to stay for now. Although we all want the energy transition, the natural gas is still there and is considered to be a bit better than maybe the other traditional fuels. So that's the situation. It also means that if you look at Colombia and, for example, the exploration that has been done offshore for natural gas, there's been quite big investments from different companies, Ecopetrol, but also companies from Europe that have invested in exploration of natural gas offshore in Colombia. And I think that's something that we hope will also see a return on the investment that has already been made in the near future.
And building on that, Alejandro, excuse me, what's the meaning of the public announcements by the Colombian government for Colombia, given the not more than 10-year reserves in existence of natural gas, to start importing gas from Venezuela?
Well, from a perspective, I mean, from a user's perspective, I mean, from the demand side, we don't care from where the gas is coming. I mean, at the end, what we need is gas to supply it to the industries, to the thermal power plants, to the local demand, et cetera, et cetera. But if you put it in a more macro context, I would say it's not the best decision when you said we are not going to continue doing it in Colombia, but I want to buy it from Venezuela. At the end, it's the same gas. Somebody is producing it. Somebody is exploring. Somebody is 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 is, is adding up methane gas to the atmosphere. At the end, I'm letting behind an opportunity for a country, like I said. I mean, a country like Colombia that is poor compared to Europe, compared to the States. But I'm letting behind an opportunity to create more opportunities to the people, and create more resources and more income to the people, but just by buying it to the neighbor, so it doesn't add up. I mean, for me, it doesn't add up. I would say this is what the government is saying, but for me, I will be prioritizing exploration and positioning Colombia as long as I can do it, as long as new technology like carbon capture and sequestration is created. But if not, I don't see the economic benefit to Colombia to do something like that.
Okay. To wrap it up, everybody who is on the audience or who will tune in asynchronically in VR networks later uh, relies on energy as a household user and certainly as a business user. What's each one of you? What's your recommendation when we talk about sustainability and energy transition at the Latam Green Chamber of Commerce and the U.S. Green Chamber of Commerce? We like to say we have to behave responsibly. We have to behave on a sustainable way. What's your advice? What people who are on the audience should start doing?
Um, well, Mauricio, I will start with something that Michelle already said. Is, I mean, um, since I have said Colombia doesn't create a technology, is a technology taker basically. We have to be very careful in what we're going to do in the future in terms of how I mean, what are we going to prioritize in the future? Is going to be hydrogen? Is going to be um, um, offshore wind? Is going to be carbon capture sequestration? What can we do as a country instead of just navigating this sea of uncertainty? What is better? What is best for us in terms of a country to meet the goal and to do it in the more efficient in terms of economically speaking way to do it. That's what I would say. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Chan, you represent two different worlds, the Netherlands and Colombia. What would you recommend that we Colombians do to go on the steps of the Dutch?
Well, I was thinking along the same line. I think my message would be believe in the energy transition, because I think there's also a lot of skepticism within Colombia because, of course, we are ambitious. We want to take the step maybe a lot quicker than other countries have taken the step. Focus is important, as Alejandro mentioned, but I think also we need also bold countries. We need countries that actually get the timeline a bit shorter than maybe other countries did. So I would say believe in the energy transition, believe this is happening. This needs to happen. So come along and let's try to make it work in Colombia together.
Thank you. Michelle, last word.
I totally agree with Alejandro and John in that I love that phrase, believe in this, because I think Colombia has the perfect conditions for that solar, for that wind, for that biomass to really grow. And going back to one of my first comments, there's jobs and there's money to be had here. So just keeping that in mind to accelerate even faster than what we've been doing, even not saying even in the United States.
Thank you. I thank you on behalf of InVR and the LATAM Green Chamber, that goes in Spanish as Cámara Verde. It's been a great panel. I'm glad you guys were daring enough to answer every single question that was presented. I just need to remind the audience that on March 13th and 14th in Bogota, we will all join for the second Colombia Green Energy Summit. I will be there personally, along with the Cámara Verde Colombia team. Judging from our experience a year ago, it is a place to be. It will be a crossing path for green energy developers, for investors, regulators, and all parties, including trade associations like ANDEG, who are at the forefront of making it happen. The green energy transition cannot be and will not be solely a public policy statement by X or Y or Z government. It is a societal effort. And as Michelle just said, we'd better believe in it. So I hope to see you guys and gal in Bogota come March, and that everybody who are on the audience attend and invite others to attend. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Have a great day.
Thanks, you too. Bye bye.
Thank you.